Welcome everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us today. My name's Lily and I'm the Ecosystem Manager at DISH, which is our Eagle Lab in Manchester. DISH stands for the Digital Security Hub, and it exists to support founders in cybersecurity and the tech space to grow and scale their business. And I'm super excited today to be joined by Matt, who is the founder and CEO of FC Labs, as well as Emily, who is the head of brain fitness personal training at FC Labs. And today they'll be sharing with us some useful tips about brain fitness. But before we start, I'd just like to tell you a little bit about our Eagle Labs Academy. It's basically a free learning tool where you can learn at your own pace. So if you're just starting your business or scaling your business, then there's modular learning that you can access, and that will help you to build your business. If you are not sure where to find it, you can check it out after this session, and you can find it at academy.uk.barclays, and we'll also share that in the chat as well. If anyone wants to talk to me a little bit more about that, then I'm always happy to have a chat, and my emails are always open. I must just read a disclaimer before we go ahead. So we've asked Matt and Emily to join us today to provide some tips and tricks on brain fitness. The topics discussed are an overview of options for you to think about to help you with your independent research and your business decisions. So they aren't intended as recommendations or advice. Remember as well that your business has its own individual circumstances. So the statements and views expressed may not be applicable or suitable for your business. And if you found yourself via YouTube today, you can find a link to VBox in the description below for you to be able to join the chat for the Q&A session that we'll do at the end of Matt and Emily's presentation. That's enough from me. Thanks for having me. And I'm going to hand over now to Matt and Emily to introduce themselves, and then we'll dive into today's session around brain fitness. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Lily. Lovely to be here. This is our first webinar, Emily. I believe. I'm trying to think if we've done before. I don't think we have. Hopefully the first of many, and starting with a big one with Barclays. So thanks ever so much to Barclays Eagle Labs for having us. As Lily says, I'm Matt. I'm the founder and CEO of FC Labs, and I'm joined by Dr. Emily Barney, our head of brain fitness personal training. So we are a wearable tech company, but unlike your Apple Watch or your Fitbit that gives you insights into your physical fitness, our wearable technology and our AI-powered SaaS platform, BrainFit, makes measuring your brain fitness and performance as easy and as normal as your physical. Click through. We are still pre-launch, but trials are live with both individual users and businesses, small and large, including some of the ones you see here. And although there are all kinds of applications of our technology, we're very focused on the B2B market, but positioning it very much as a well-being benefit for the individual, providing data, insights, and support to help people to better understand their brain and mental health, fitness, and performance, what might be affecting it, and how to improve it. And all of that for less than £1 a day. But let's take a step back. What is brain fitness? So this is the World Health Organization definition, a little bit wordy as you might imagine, but it is what it is. It's what makes us fit for the demands of life and work, anything that life or work might throw to us or we choose to tackle. If you're a Grey's Anatomy fan, this might make a little bit more sense. Essentially, the brain is the leader and it makes the body work. If you're familiar with sport, a lot of athletes talk about the importance of that brain and mental fitness to really unlock the best performance. Physical fitness and skills play a part, but the brain is really, really crucial. That's essentially what this quote from Grey's Anatomy is saying. It's also important to differentiate between brain fitness and brain performance. So just like your physical fitness, brain fitness is a long-term trend. It doesn't fluctuate wildly from one minute to the next. All sorts of things affect it. Brain performance does fluctuate in real time, depending on the level of brain fitness and its ability to cope with the demands being placed on it, and also countless other factors that might be at play. So what we do through the BrainFit platform is give you a daily score for your brain fitness. We call that your core score. And we do this using data from any sessions where you've worn our wearable, but also by measuring factors that we know will be affecting brain fitness. And we can do that using devices you already have, like those Apple Watches or Garmin's or Fitbits. but it's only when you're wearing our device that we can give you that real-time insight into your brain performance and a brain performance score using brain activity data that we collect to provide insights into levels of focus, attention, reaction times, decision making, and so on. So both brain fitness and performance are affected by countless factors. If you're a startup founder like we are, or an entrepreneur or business owner, you'll be familiar with many of these. So stress, lack of sleep, physical inactivity, drugs and alcohol, dehydration, poor nutrition, even heat and cold, all have an impact at home as well as at work. And the result is we just don't feel or function at our best. So mistakes are made, accidents happen, productivity declines, and eventually we burn out. The cost of low brain fitness to the global economy and lost productivity is estimated to be $8.5 trillion. 82% of workers are at risk of burnout, and burnout costs businesses £3,400 for every £10,000 of salary in absenteeism, presenteeism, and churn. And particularly close to home, I mentioned it before, as startup founders were particularly high risk. So 49% of startup founders are considering quitting, describing themselves as overworked, exhausted, and broken. That's from a sifted survey. But the problem with brain and mental health, fitness, and performance is that outside of the lab, it's impossible to measure and even harder to predict. As individuals, we're notoriously bad at self-assessing. So we like the comfort of having that objective data. It's why there's been a boom in wearable tech. It's fueled by both our fascination with what's going on in our bodies and the behavioral change benefits of that data. If you can measure it, you can better manage it. But what's going on in our brains is still completely invisible. So BrainFit essentially makes the invisible visible. It takes the guesswork out of what's going on in your head. And there are three elements to the platform. At the heart of it, there's our wearable tech, incredibly small, lightweight, low cost, uses near infrared light to look at brain activity in the prefrontal cortex. We're looking at blood flow and oxygenation levels. We can integrate it into pretty much anything that you might already wear on your head, either at work or in your personal life. Our first product launching later this year will be a baseball cap and an accessory that allows our tech to be attached to a hard hat. The second element is our software, the AI-powered platform that takes data from both our wearable, whenever you choose to wear it, and those other wearables that you might already have. So you're not going to wear something on your head 24/7, but when we're not collecting brain activity data using our wearable, we can collect data on factors that are affecting your brain fitness using that Apple Watch or Fitbit, and then combining that data allows us to deliver data and insights into brain fitness, whether you're wearing our device or not, and to measure real-time brain performance when you are. So the third and perhaps most important element of the BrainFit platform, and the one we're going to particularly talk about today, is the support that we provide. So those data and insights are all well and good, but understanding what to do with it is absolutely crucial. So like many health and fitness wearables nowadays, we have an AI-powered brain fitness coach. It gives you personalized summaries and insights and suggestions, but you can also ask it any questions you might like. On brain fitness, I would recommend focusing. I'm sure it can answer other questions like how to make a cheese souffle or something. I don't know where that came from. But the other support we provide is somewhat more unusual for wearables, in that you've got access to human support. So we've got a team of brain fitness experts available on demand through WhatsApp or in-app messaging. But we've also been trialing brain fitness personal training, and this is where Emily has played such a huge part and what she's going to talk about more today. So these are more structured programs with weekly one-to-one sessions for 10 to 12 weeks. Typically, you don't need to do it forever. And it's exactly like with your physical fitness. If you feel you would benefit from some additional support, you might get a personal trainer to help you in the gym or help you online. It's about understanding what you need to do to get to where you want to be. It's about making sure that you've got correct form. It's about making sure that you're using the equipment correctly. And it's about understanding any data that wearables you have might be giving you. So Emily heads up that brain fitness personal training program, and with a clinical psychology background is far better placed than me, I have to say, to tell you a bit more about why and how what we do works, and also to give you some simple hints and tips and tools that you can take away today to hopefully help you to improve your own brain fitness and performance. So over to you, Emily.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you. I've got half an hour, I think, now to talk to you, to tell you a bit more about the basics of how the brain works, and a bit more about brain fitness and how you can improve it, so you can sort of go away sort of knowing a bit more about how the brain sort of puts on what we call mental weight, which we call chronic stress in the sort of brain fitness training world, and how we sort of shred that and strengthen the positive circuits in the brain, so the brain is able to perform to meet the demands of this fast-paced modern world without wasting energy, so sort of being energy efficient, and without causing what we call mental injury to itself. So that's what I'll talk to you about now in the next half an hour. Just a little bit about my background first, though. So I think Matt's just mentioned there, my background is in the mental health care profession. I'm a clinical psychologist by background, so I spent 10 years in the NHS working in various mental health teams before I left the profession to focus in this area of brain fitness, and I opened the UK's first brain gym in December 2023, and specialises in brain fitness personal training. So since opening the brain gym, I've had over 70 people try this new approach, and I've delivered over 500 sessions. So I'm using experience and knowledge from that to inform these slides today. But also, as Matt mentioned, I head up the brain fitness personal training team at FC Labs. So we provide bespoke training plans for the brain fit subscribers and bespoke workouts for people. And we're also working on a training course so that there'll be a recognised qualification in brain fitness personal training, so that hopefully not the too distant future it'll be as easy to go see a brain fitness personal trainer as it is a regular personal trainer for your body. So exciting times. But just like with physical fitness, you don't need to go see a personal trainer to get your brain in shape. It's the same. It's you will be working out your brain now. You can keep your own brain fit, relatively straightforward. You'll most likely be doing it now without actually labelling it as such. So the actual process to sort of how the brain puts on weight and how we can get rid of it and strengthen our brain is quite straightforward, which I'm going to explain to you in a little bit. Actually sort of turning things around and getting it into shape and getting it fitter if your brain is sort of out of shape and carrying a lot of weight requires a bit of discipline and effort. But just like when we're getting ourselves physically fit, it requires sort of effort, but it can absolutely be done. It can absolutely be done. Okay, so brain fitness, as you've heard, it's all about, we're interested in brain fitness and brain fitness personal training, all about getting the brain to perform so it's in better shape to deal with the demands of this life without causing an injury and being energy efficient. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit more about brain fitness now before I talk about actually how the brain works. So one function we're particularly interested in brain fitness is the brain's stress threshold. So the fitter the brain is, the higher its threshold for stress, meaning it's able to cope with more stresses or pressures before getting tired, and it's able to adapt to the challenges in the environment more efficiently and prioritize competing demands and keep that forward momentum going without wasting energy. Much like a really physically fit person can run relatively fast for long periods of time, cover quite a bit of distance over obstacles with relative ease without getting exhausted, because their lactic threshold is higher through regular training. So in brain fitness, we're really interested in increasing that lactic threshold through regular training. So not lactic threshold, your stress threshold. So how do you train the brain? How do you exercise the brain to increase that stress threshold? There are lots of ways. First thing I can suggest is pushing your brain outside of its comfort zone. Right, it's getting comfortable with discomfort. You can do this intentionally, or it can be unintentional. Life can just throw these curveballs at us, and now we're sort of in new territory. Now, this is excellent exercise for the brain. You don't need to go to a gym. Life has a way of giving us these workouts. So when a curveball's been thrown at us and we're out of our comfort zone, it really is excellent exercise for increasing that stress threshold if you're managing the stress, importantly, because what will happen is that exposure to the stress, once you're through the other side, it will make it, because your threshold has increased, it will make it harder for you for things to stress you out. If it's a life-changing event, then it really, when you're through the other side, you will find that not much will really sort of phase you. Again, it'll be harder to. So that's really important. So you can train your brain by regularly pushing yourself out your comfort zone, and try small. It can be the smallest of things. You know, I'm going to try doing something different. I'm going to try a new meal, or try something new. Just pushing yourself a little bit out of your comfort zone regularly is exercise for the brain. It's training the brain. So to do more of that. Another way is to focus on responding instead of reacting. This is really, really good strength training for the brain. So every time you get upset, you just want to react instantly back. So try practicing waiting, just simply doing nothing. Okay, and this is where we train in personal training. It's about sending those dominant messages, when to strengthen the messages in the brain. So really doing nothing, that's really, really good exercise. Where wait until you've calmed down and gathered data so that you can respond. That's a really good way of strengthening the stress threshold. It could be an hour, it could be a week, it could never happen. But try to not react with emotion and just wait. That really will strengthen the brain and the prefrontal cortex. Another one is refusing to rush. Again, I talk about this a lot in personal training, just sending that dominant message and refusing to rush. Because there's so many demands pushed on us, but we have to be really strong with the message we're sending back to our own brain. That isn't the same as going slow. It's just refusing to rush. That will make it. That will make a big difference on your performance. And again, another nice way of training the brain without having to go to a gym or personal training. Can do these things whenever. Another way, believe it or not, and we do this a lot, and this is a focus in personal training, is to simply concentrate your attention on the positives in your life. So this deliberate focus of attention, what it does is it creates a steady flow of what we call serotonin in the brain. And what serotonin does, gives us this feeling that we can cope and we're calm and in control. And it gives us this feeling of things are okay, and enoughness, satisfaction and enoughness, like satisfaction with what is. That's what serotonin gives us. Keeps everything nice and relaxed, which is essential to performance, if you think about it. Like with the body, if we want to use the body, it will perform better when it's relaxed, not when it's tense. When the brain is tensed and sort of holding on to things too tight, it won't perform as well. So if we're really having to sort of understand everything or get to the bottom of everything or control everything around us or care too much about everything, that makes a significant impact on performance. So we need to create this steady flow of serotonin, these patterns in the brain that gives us this steady flow of serotonin. In brain fitness personal training, we call this concentrating on the 3 Ps: positive action, interaction and thinking. So I'll come on to that a bit later if we have time or in the Q&A. So concentrate on the positives. Another area we are interested in brain fitness is the area of recovery. So how quickly is the brain, after sustaining what we call a mental injury, how quickly is it able to get back to firing off those patterns that create a steady flow of serotonin? So a mental injury can be things like a blow to confidence, maybe someone said something that makes you think your way of doing things is wrong, or makes you doubt yourself, or being rejected, or some sort of criticism or setback, failing at something. How quickly is the brain able to get back to concentrating on the positives and creating that steady flow of serotonin? A more severe injury can be things like being shamed or publicly shamed. But these things happen. These things can happen to us in life. A fitter brain is able to process the emotion and is able to get back to concentrating on the positives and creating that steady flow of serotonin. So another area we are interested in brain fitness is enhancing blood flow, particularly to the frontal lobe and the prefrontal cortex. This part of the brain is responsible for our higher cognitive functions, our higher reasoning, our ability to think about thinking, our ability to solve problems, to reason and plan and make decisions based on logic, to feel empathy and regulate our emotions, to innovate and respond flexibly, and to use our intuition. Now, research shows that aerobic exercise is the biggest way to increase our cerebral blood flow. So increasing your heart rate will make a big difference to your brain fitness. That's why activity is tracked and is one of the main metrics that feed into our overall core score on the app, on our on our platform. So increasing your aerobic exercise is a significant factor. So if you can aim to raise your heart rate for 3 hours a week, great. If you can do even more than that consistently, that will make a significant impact. So it is worthwhile thinking about raising that heart rate regularly. Okay, and in brain fitness, we're also very interested in not just what's happening in our cognitive functions, but also what's happening when the brain is switched off, okay, when it's in state of rest or sleep. Because when the brain is in this state, it's not doing nothing. It's doing something very crucial. This is when neuroplasticity is occurring. So when the brain is rewiring. So if you're in a position that your life situation currently, you're in new territory and you've got to learn new ways of doing things, or maybe there's a problem you've got, or you've got to create or come up with ideas or find solutions. Now, the structural changes required in the brain for that to happen doesn't happen when you focus on the problem. It happens when you are resting or sleeping. That's when that happens in the brain, much like with the muscles with your body. When you're lifting the weight, the muscles, new muscle fibers aren't created when you're physically lifting the weight. They happen when your body is resting. So this is why resting and sleeping is crucial to brain fitness as well. And again, that's tracked as a metric, is tracked as part of your overall core score. So really, it's worthwhile just thinking about your sleep. That's the main one. So what you can do to improve your sleep, you obviously want to aim for around 7 to 8 hours of sleep each night. Make it a priority of this if you've got problematic sleep. And also think about consistency with your sleep routine as well. That's very relevant. Trying to get, when you can, to bed at a similar sort of time each night and waking up at a similar sort of time each night. Okay. All right, just because I'm aware of time, if we've got time, we'll go into this in the Q&A afterwards to talk about personal training, but just wanted to briefly mention really 3 core exercises we do in brain fitness personal training. So the brain works out in a personal training session. By doing these 3 main core exercises, really, we focus attention on the positive things in life. So every time you're using that and concentrating on the positives, you're strengthening those circuits so the brain gets better at noticing. It takes less effort to notice the positives. Visualizing for success, and also we do a deep rest exercise as well, because I can't tell you how many people in personal training are always switched on, always having to do something, can't switch the brain off. So it really is an essential skill to get better at resting the brain. Lots of ways to rest the brain. You don't have to meditate every day or practice mindfulness, or of course that will sort of go a long way, but really there are lots of ways you can just start now. Yeah, you just sit with a cup of tea in the morning and do nothing, stare at the wall, don't think of anything. It's so good for the brain. Daydreaming is another good one, mind wandering. Okay, and we do this, the brain does this very naturally, but do more of that when you can. Perhaps not when you're in meetings with someone, but when you're stuck in traffic or in a queue, I think you take these opportunities just to switch the brain off, because knowing what you're doing in the brain when you're doing that is very important to your overall brain's performance. All right, okay, let's have a look now at how the brain works. I'm going to talk you through a sort of an overview of how it all works, what the main parts are, what they're designed to do, how they interact together, so we can understand what it looks like when the brain's performing well and when it's smoothly and when it's underperforming. So here we've got your head. If this is the head, this bit at the front is the conscious part, the bit as you. It's the part that interacts with the world. It's the part we're using right now to be aware of our interactions together. And it's attached to a vast intellectual resource we call our intellectual mind, the intellectual brain. Now, this part of the brain we don't share with other animals. We don't share with other animals. It's our ability as humans to mentally time travel and predict the future based on past events is what sets us apart from other humans and allows us to innovate and create and solve problems. So no other species has these expertise as us, and the skills and capabilities of the human intellectual brain. That's why you don't see dogs and cats driving cars or using mobile phones. So when we operate from this part of the brain, we're generally getting things right in life. Our brain will always come up with answers based on a proper assessment of the situation, and it's generally very positive. But there's another part of the brain, our original primitive part. The centre and influential bit of this part of the brain is something that we call the amygdala. This is generally referred to as the fight, flight, depression area of the brain. And it's associated with two other very primitive parts. We've got the hippocampus, which holds our primitive and sometimes inappropriate behavioural experiences and patterns, and the hypothalamus, which regulates the chemical responses in the body and the brain. Okay, so let us imagine now you come off this call today and you go outside and you run into a polar bear. What would happen in your brain and your body? So instantly, your anxiety will go up and you'd lose control of the intellectual brain, and you'd come down here and the primitive emotional brain would take the control. Okay, so you go sweaty, increase your heartbeat, turn your stomach, and you'll be off like a shot. Now, in the circumstances, this response would be entirely appropriate. You'd be pleased, right? Unfortunately, though, it's the same in life. When our anxiety goes up, and it can be just a gradual process, so slow that we don't even realise that weight piling on, like it does with our physical body. It's just piling on just gradually. But what happens in the brain is this: as our anxiety goes up, we lose intellectual control, and to a greater or lesser extent, our primitive mind, our primitive brain takes over. And this brain always operates within the primitive parameters of depression, anxiety, or anger, or a combination of the three. So if our primitive brain thinks that for one reason or another, our life is in some sort of crisis or emergency, it's going to step in generally to help us, to protect us. Depression, anxiety, and anger are all primitive opt-out clauses. So, for example, when the caveman looked out the cave and there was snow and ice and danger and he couldn't go out to hunt, he pulled the rug over his head and didn't interact until the situation changed. Now, we've adapted this to all the modern day symptoms of depression. And if we were in the jungle in those days, I doubt very much it would be too far away from our panic button at any given time. And anger is just merely a primitive way of increasing our strength to defend ourselves against wild animals and other wild tribes. But there's more. There's more. The primitive mind is a negative mind. So it always sees things from the worst possible perspective. If you think about it, it has to for our self-preservation, so that when we run into that polar bear, the brain doesn't sort of intellectually, sort of curiously weigh it up and think, oh, maybe it's eaten already. You know, quite rightly, that brain will send a definitive message. Now, that thing is going to snaffle you. That thing's going to kill you. So this response is great for when we run into polar bears, but not so good for when the bank statement arrives, or we're facing redundancy, or we've had an argument with our boss. You know, it stops us thinking creatively to finding solutions, just straight to worst case scenario. It's also an obsessional mind. So if you did have a polar bear in that back garden, you'd be minded of it constantly, and you'll keep on checking. It's also a vigilant mind. So if the perception is the danger is all around, then it's wise to stay on red alert. Also, our primitive brain can't innovate. It's not an intellect like this top part, our intellectual mind. It has to refer to previous patterns of behaviour stored here. Okay, because if what we did yesterday ensured our survival, then we're encouraged to do it again. That's how it works. So how do you create this anxiety then, that leads us from this lovely intellectual, sensible, clear thinking part of the brain down to the angry, anxious and reactive part? So the anxiety is caused by negative thinking. So it's not the events in our lives that necessarily cause this perception of crisis, because if that was so, everybody, say, who lost their job would be so depressed they couldn't sort of function, or everybody being in a car accident would be so afraid they wouldn't get in a car again. And we know that's not how it works. So it must be our thought patterns surrounding the events of our life that cause this anxiety. So every negative thought we have is converted into anxiety. And we create anxiety by negatively forecasting the future. So this fabulous sort of machine we've got to be able to imagine, our fabulous imaginations that sets us apart, also can work against us. So we can negatively forecast the future. It can just be big things. We say to ourselves, I'll never be able to afford that. I'll never find another partner. I'll never have a baby. I'll always be miserable. I'm stuck in this job. Whatever we forecast for ourselves. Or it could be the small things like that meeting. Say you've got a meeting you've got to go to. Now, here we should remember the mind can't tell the difference between imagination and reality. So intellectually, you know the meeting's going to go okay, because they generally do, you're safe, but your primitive mind will get you thinking about all the things going wrong. And you'll think about it 50 times, and the actual meeting goes quite well, but you've attended 51 meetings and 50 have been disasters. Okay, so the primitive mind also negatively introspects about the past. So if you're sort of worst case scenario forecasting the future, or negatively introspecting about something from the past, that's you in your primitive mind. That's how it works. So now every negative thought we have that we have is accumulated and stored, and we say it's stored in what's called a stress bucket. Now, thankfully, we do have a method for emptying our bucket, and it's known as REM sleep. So I talked about sleep before being so important to brain fitness. Now, rapid eye movement sleep at night is what happens during our rapid eye movement sleep. Is our brain reruns the events of the day and changes the form and the memory, changes them from being emotional memory that's stuck here to a narrative memory. So it moves it up into intellectual mind. And then the narrative memory is a memory we can have control over. So you'll be familiar with how REM works. Let's say someone upsets you in the afternoon, and you really are upset, or you've had a comment on social media or something, but it's really upset you, and you go and speak to your partner or friend about it, and they just say, well, just forget about it, it's not worth it, but you can't. It's really upset you, and your brain is off, just overthinking all the negatives. Now, and you're thinking and thinking, it's got that stuck quality to it. You can't get your mind off it. So you think about it when you go to bed at night. Now, during your REM sleep, what your brain does is it reruns that event, either in clear form or metaphorically in a dream, and you move it from your primitive brain up into your intellectual brain. And the form of the memories change. So the brain has let go of the emotion, and now it's got the control, it's got words, so it's got narrative on it. So that you wake the next morning and you might well have forgotten about that horrible person, because it's no longer relevant. It's no longer, like, it doesn't matter. So you're just getting on with your day. Or if you haven't sort of forgotten about it, you're saying something like, how do I allow these people to upset me so that you've got a handle on it, and you're making decisions and taking action about it. So that's gone out the bucket, because it doesn't matter in the same way. The brain's process the emotion. So I fondly imagine that I awake each morning with my bucket emptied, so I can start the day without any anxiety or anger or depression. That's when the brain is fit. Okay, so a little bit might go in the bucket during the day, but if we go to sleep, we get in our sleep, we're waking each morning, complete bucket empty, completely ready to face the day. No anger, anxiety or depression, just able to perform. But when the brain is unfit, we don't imagine this. This isn't what's happening. So what actually is going on when the brain is unfit? So what happens is we are piling too much into our bucket. Okay, so by too much negative thinking. So in brain fitness personal training, we start to consider the negative thinking that don't get turned into action, like being like junk food for the brain. There's no nutritional value in it. So if we're just mindlessly just thinking negative, the weight's going to start piling on. Okay, and sometimes it will overflow, because sadly, for one reason or another, we don't really understand why, but the brain can only the brain restricted to about 20% of our sleep patterns for REM sleep. I think it's because it burns so much energy. So if you try to overdo it during the day with too much negative thinking, then the brain will just wake you up at night, and you know it's your brain waking you up, because, and we've all been there, like your brain will wake you up in the middle of the night, wide awake, and you're just on. The brain's just on, and you feel quite miserable, and you just can't get back to sleep. It takes hours to get back to sleep. That's it, sort of your bucket overflowing. Or it can go the other way, where you sleep and you just wake up exhausted. Again, that's an overflowing bucket as well. The brain is spending too much energy trying to process the stuff in the bucket, that it doesn't get down to the deep sleep and restore cells. So we just wake up exhausted and with a spillover from the day before, and then spillover from weeks before and years before, and then before we know it, we're carrying a lot of mental weight. So now we're in the grip of what we call a vicious cycle. So the more that's in our bucket, the more time then, the more we have in the bucket, the more time we're more likely to spend in our primitive mind during the day. And then that primitive mind, when we're in it, is then more likely to see the negative in situations that we face during the day. So further adding more into the bucket. Okay, so we can get stuck. So you can see now how we start to get people back performing is to reverse the cycle, and we start to get things by getting people initially to very simply, let's say simply, sort of, because it is hard if your bucket's overflowing, but within very strict, to start to concentrate on the positive things in life. And you know when you start to do that, because you start to sleep better and you feel better. Concentrate. That's not avoiding the negative. It's very different. It's a decision to concentrate on what's good in your life. Okay, so that we're giving the brain a bit of time to catch up, so we're not overdoing it. Okay, so that's when this starts happening. When we start to concentrate, the bucket slowly starts coming down. The anxiety comes down slowly, and it takes time for that brain to get fitter, just like it takes time with the body to start to get rid of mental weight and physical weight. If you've got excess physical weight you're carrying, the change doesn't happen overnight. It takes a bit of time, but usually the same with brain fitness. It takes 2 or 3 months. You'll start to see just slowly this really gradual process of the anxiety coming down, and just gently that intellectual mind coming back in control. And what that feels like is you're starting to wake each day with an empty bucket. There's no anger, anxiety or depression. You're just ready to face the day. Then your intellectual mind is in control. That makes a proper assessment of situations. Steady flow of serotonin is going, so we feel nice and calm and in control. We're more likely to see the positive in situations, further just keeping that bucket nice and empty, so that we're just waking each day, just reset. Okay, that's the performance cycle. That's when the brain is able to perform and meet the demands and needs and perform better. So, all right. Just one final thing to go through, just the last couple of minutes before we go to Q&A. It's just to tell you a little bit more about the physiology, about what is happening in the brain when we pile on excess mental weight and we have this chronic stress, because what happens, it weakens our prefrontal cortex to the point where we can develop mental illnesses and suffer from things like anxiety and depression. So early man and early woman were given quite definitive rewards for carrying out certain evolutionary processes. So they got reward when they hunted and gathered and successfully supported themselves and their families, and were better as a tribe rather than individuals. So they got rewarded when they interacted with others. And the reward they got, they're quite definitively recognised, and scientists are adamant about this. They felt motivated. But most of all, it was a coping mechanism. It helped them cope with day-to-day activities, helped them cope with better with physical fear, and made them braver. It even helped them cope better with physical pain. So no doubt they were pleased. And now we know what that reward is. It's a chemical response in the brain that produces various neurotransmitters that act as a catalyst for this sort of mentally healthy behaviour. And you know the neurotransmitter we talk about the most, simply because it's the most important, is this serotonin, I think I mentioned earlier. So we need to operate within these positive parameters I've got down here, just like early man did. So although we don't have to go out to hunt, we do have to interact in a positive way, be active in a positive way, and think in a positive way. We call this the 3 Ps, because when we do that, we produce the patterns in the brain that give us that steady flow of serotonin. But not just the steady flow of serotonin. I've got DOSE here. DOSE stands for dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphin. So we've got the steady flow of all the good stuff. Dopamine to do with reward and pleasure and our drive. Oxytocin to do with sort of compassion and being our resources to give to others. And of course, endorphins and natural pain relief and feel-good chemicals. So when we're in this zone, in these positive parameters, that's when we're producing patterns that give us that steady flow of these good chemicals. So that's the performance zone. What stops the flow of serotonin is if we're at the top end, if we're down the miserable end of the scale, living with depression, or then the brain doesn't produce any chemicals at all. And if we're at the anxious end, the brain produces an overload of adrenaline and stress hormones. Great for short-term performance because it increases our sort of cognitive processing, but the brain can't handle too much stress for too long. Chronic stress is what weakens our prefrontal cortex. So great for short term, but not long term. We don't want to be in that zone. This is where the performance lies, in these positive parameters. Okay, and I think that is about all I need to go into today. I think we've got enough time there then now to go into the Q&A, I think. Yes.
Fabulous. Thanks so much, Emily. Very, very informative. Thank you. So we've had a few questions from the audience coming through, some really interesting ones. The first, and I don't know between the two of you who'd like to answer, but the first question is, how important is it to regularly challenge our brains with new skills or learning new things for cognitive health?
Say that again, sorry. How regularly?
How important is it to regularly challenge our brains with new skills or learning new things for cognitive health?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very, like I said, it's one way to improve your stress threshold. You know, I recommend do it sort of within, you be sensible in how much sort of weight you push it, you know, but yeah, absolutely. Pushing yourself out your comfort zone is one way to increase your stress threshold. Absolutely. Yeah, so even the smallest bit, that's what we're training in personal training, is the small stuff really does matter, and building that. So it can start as small as, I'm going to try cooking something new for my dinner tonight, or, you know, I'm going to take a new exercise class, or whatever. Like it really is, like, start with what you can do right now, but just push it a little bit. It's very important.
Yeah, I'd sort of echo that a wee bit as well. Been a more non-technical, non-scientific founder as well, but I think there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of stuff out there on social media about the importance of learning a new language or learning a musical instrument, and like quite big challenges. You think that's like, I've got 2 guitars on the wall behind me. I've not touched either of them for about a year and a half, to be honest with you. So it's difficult sometimes to get these big challenges into your life. As Emily says, the best thing is whatever you can do on a regular basis, and it doesn't need to be this huge big thing. Just whatever you can do, but definitely doing new things is important. It's a bit like, there was another question I think came through on the chat about what sort of exercise, and it's just like physical fitness. If you go to the gym and all you do are bicep curls, you're not really going to be particularly fit. You're going to be strong in the arms. So doing new things every now and then, even small changes, like cooking something new for dinner, actually is a good idea.
Yeah. And I think as well, particularly if you're down that bottom end of the scale, like, so living down like where you really are sort of understimulated, you know, like, so it's down that sort of depressed, miserable end of the scale, like the brain could start to sort of atrophy, you know, sort of shrink. So really, that I really would recommend, you know, like doing those sort of smaller activities. And with the top end of the scale, it might likely be that you really are sort of out of your comfort zone, like you really are sort of, they've got a lot going on, you know. So it might be that there's other ways. It might be that, like, sort of your life situation actually is giving you a good workout as it is, you know. And it might be then that it's about a different way of concentrating on a stress threshold and keeping that positive serotonin flowing in that situation. Because if we're out of our comfort zone, the brain is very likely to go to the negative and stick to like what I'm not doing, what I can't do, what I should be doing. Actually go concentrate on what is good, what am I doing, what do I want to do, and doing more. Believe it or not, putting effort into doing more of the stuff that makes you feel good. It really is that simple sometimes. What do I want to do? Like, so my spare time, I like music, I like listening to music, so I'm going to get more of that in my life. Or I like going for doing more of the good stuff that just simply just makes you feel good. It really will cope, because it's that serotonin that then brings that anxiety down, and means the brain is able then, all those frontal regions, the thinking part, is able to stay engaged and find solutions. So that really does, I recommend that as well, you know, without doubt, using those positive circuits, so the brain's able, when you're faced with something, to look on the positives as well. So
nice, thank you. Next question, is there a specific type of brain training or activity that I can do to stay ahead of industry trends and maintain a competitive edge?
Hours.
Interesting.
Basically. No, honestly, and I'll let Emily jump in here as well, but as the CEO, I feel I'd be not doing my job if I didn't say that. But I think that the difference with what we do is that we help you to identify what works for you. So there are all sorts of different things you could do to improve your brain fitness, all kinds of brain training tools and games and apps, and some of them are nonsense, some of them are pretty good. There's other things you can do to improve your not necessarily brain fitness, but certainly brain performance. I know people, particularly in the tech space, often are exploring psychedelics. Certain parts of the world, they're more easily accessible than others. And I mean, you've even got Marks and Spencer's with a range of brain food now. So I don't know if that brain ball looks like a protein ball just rebranded if you look at the ingredients, but it's good. So long story short, there's all sorts of things you can do. There isn't one thing that's right for everybody, but we can help you to better understand what works for you, basically.
Yeah, I think as well, like this basic understanding of how your brain works, like to know you've got everything you need in all the resources to be able to, when all you need to do is keep that bucket to get that bucket down and keep that emptied. So if you are waking sort of every day, just there's no anger, anxiety, depression, you've got a nice steady flow of serotonin going, so you're calm and in control and relaxed, then you've got everything you need. Your brain will find the solutions. It will be innovative. It can see that bigger picture. So using the metaphor of like someone that physical fitness, someone going over an obstacle course, when our brain is unfit, it's like a metaphor of someone just trying to just chop down every obstacle rather than just simply going over it. Like, so the brain is energy efficient. It knows it can go over the obstacle, it just goes over it. It doesn't even see it as an obstacle. What happens then is, rather than focusing on this obstacle, trying to just waste energy, get this obstacle down, because the brain's fitter, it can scan the environment, it can see ahead for miles. I'll clock it off. So it's talking when the brain is fitter, it can think clearer. So you just have everything you need. Like really, really just focus on getting that flow of serotonin, and your brain will give you the answers. The brain will absolutely. Yeah. I don't think that is quite vague, but it really is. It's knowing that confidence that I've got everything I need. There's life gives you that. Life gives you the workouts. Like it really does. It just gives you those workouts.
It's just like physical fitness, Lily. Really, there's a level at which we're about just helping people to improve brain and mental health and fitness and strength and resilience. But if you want to perform at the highest level physically, then you will do more than somebody who just wants to be sort of happy and healthy and live along. And longevity, obviously, is a key topic these days too. So it's horses for courses, basically. If you really want to perform at the highest level in terms of your brain fitness and performance, then there are all sorts of things that you might do. And again, we do find that we tend to work with people who are after that sort of extra level, whether they're feeling sort of stress, pressure. Startup founders, weirdly, are not a specific audience for us, but we're finding a lot of interest from them because they're finding their lives are full of stress and fatigue, and they don't want to burn out, but equally they don't want to do less. They want to do more, better. They want to be fitter and stronger and more resilient, and that's what we can help them with.
Fab, thanks guys. And I think you've kind of touched on this one, but I'll ask as it's been put in the chat. Can mindfulness and or meditation be good methods of improving brain fitness alongside physical exercise such as yoga?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, do some more. I think what I try to absolutely. There's so much research in the effects of like meditation and mindfulness. What I do in the deep resting in the brain fitness personal training is actually I use a different method. I use a daydreaming exercise because it's just easier to do. Some people like it. It takes practice a bit more with sort of meditation. When everybody can daydream, actually, absolutely. Like if you can get some, like the brain likes rituals and routine and discipline. So if you can sort of go one step further and sort of have a ritualized sort of like in the morning I do this and evening, like you really, really will see benefits from that. The brain performs well under those sort of conditions. But really, I really wanted to get a message across that don't. It's all about the doing. Not sort of thinking too hard. You can do it right away. You can take moments to just rest and not think and not do anything, just rest or daydream or take those moments in the day. It doesn't have to be I have to get really skilled at being like meditating. Just sit and don't do anything. Sit and think. That's really hard work for some people. a lot of us, but like really,
yeah.
So there, yeah.
Nice. Kind of tying in with what we've just said around like routine, and the next question is around sleep. So somebody said that sleep is obviously important for brain function, but how can we best optimize our sleep patterns to ensure we're at our best the following day?
Yeah, so I think the best way
to answer this,
the best way to answer this is that we're not specifically a sleep device. So you wouldn't wear our wearable while you're sleeping. We may well develop something in the future. Sleep is something that we measure using other devices. So like your Apple Watch, your Fitbit, your Garmin, and they provide a much more granular level of data through their apps. So you get a lot more data on your specific sleep makeup from the devices that we integrate into our platform. What we can see is how that's having an impact on your brain fitness and performance, and when and where sleep might be a key issue, which, as Emily was saying before, it generally is. If you're not getting enough sleep, then pretty much everything else won't really help counteract that to a sufficient degree. So with sleep, what we can do is help you to identify what might be impacting your sleep, particularly if you're having BrainFit PT. You're getting a much more sort of personalized, in-depth assessment and support with specific things that might be affecting your brain fitness. So I suppose that's the short answer to that. But I think it's all linked. So if you're taking care with your brain fitness and doing what you can to improve it, sleeping better will likely be a result of that as well, because as Emily says, you're kind of in control more of your thoughts, I suppose, but also how you respond to them. So a lot of people talk about going to bed and not they've got thoughts running through their mind and they can't control them and it's stopping them getting to sleep. If you're brain fit, you're more in control of that. So you will likely be able to sleep better.
And there are like, sometimes the answer is right there in front of you. It just needs, like in personal training, for someone to say this is what you need to do as part of a training plan. A quite common thing really is that thing I talked about, people not being sort of shutting off and stuff, people on the go, sort of using the brain right up to the point of going to sleep. And I said that's sort of the metaphorical equivalent of driving a car and trying to get it into the garage at like 30 miles an hour straight into the garage. You've got to slow the car down to be able to stop it and then get it, so there's a process of bringing, so it really is just putting a bit of thought into, like this is the time I want to go to sleep, and like well, then we need to work back from that, because the brain needs time to just, like that car, just slow down and be ready for bed. And then there's lots of like sleep hygiene sort of tools available on the internet, like like obviously the things not on your phone and things, but a big factor is the consistency of your routine. If you can, I think it's very relevant to try to get, I know it varies and depending on your life context, but really sort of when you can, trying to sort of keep the structure. So like going to bed a similar sort of time every night and waking up a similar day, that really will make a difference as well. There's lots of resources available. As Matt says, we're not a sleep sort of experts, but we do tailor the personal training to if on the sort of people sort of has a problem with sleep, we can tailor that approach. But yeah, absolutely, just thinking about slowing the brain down. It's a very common one, so the answers are right there.
Get off your phone before bed. I think some people find it a bit harder.
It's not rocket science, particularly, or even neuroscience, to be honest.
It's a lot to do with how much is in the bucket. If you've been constantly overdoing it by too much negative thinking during the day, then that it will be hard to sort of switch off. So you need to sort of do something that's get a bit of serotonin going, that you like, whatever that is, like drawing, painting, watching, whatever's good for you, makes you feel good. Yeah.
Lovely, thank you. Somebody has said, great offering. I've signed up for the newsletter. May they ask when this will be available, or is it already? If so, can we start using BrainFit? Just for info, they're a founder with a Samsung Watch 5 Pro, if that's of any relevance.
Yeah, so we are still pre-launch of our own wearable. That will be around October, November this year that we start shipping. We're just deciding on our manufacturing partner, basically. So that will be coming soon. But as we've said, the BrainFit platform can use data from other devices to give you insights into your brain fitness. We're not looking at brain activity specifically, we're looking at factors that are affecting it, so can still provide insights and support. So that's live now, still in a kind of pre-launch trial format. But if anybody's keen to get involved and to start using it, then yeah, please do get in touch. And we're adding integration capabilities all the time. So Samsung is a couple of weeks away, I think, and Whoop, frustratingly, because I've been a Whoop user for ages. Whoop is the one that it's a battle. They're not keen to share their data with anybody at the moment, which is frustrating. But I've had to resort to an Oura Ring. So anybody with an Oura Ring, I know it was on lots of people's Christmas lists this year. We can integrate with Oura too, yeah, and Fitbit, Garmin, Apple Watch, all of those. So yeah, long story short, we're available now, and yeah, delighted to work with anybody. We're still in that kind of product development stage on that final journey. So working with people, getting feedback is great.
Fabulous. This is just a general comment from the audience when, Emily, you were talking about the REM sleep. While the bit around the thought and REM sleep is mind-blowing, this happened to me when a few people wrote quite nasty comments on my social media last night. So kind of talking around what you were discussing, Emily, about the bucket and the kind of stress there. So
yeah. Interestingly, the fitter our brain is, we can sort of process that top down and sort of tell ourselves like it doesn't matter, but sometimes things just land. We just have to wait for our brain to sleep it out. You know, a few nights sleep and the brain will change the format of that memory. You know, so just make sure we don't keep on piling it on. You know, just let the brain do its thing.
Yeah. Thank you. One around working, actually. How do you recommend we approach changing working practices aligned with brain fitness with employers or clients?
Yeah, so I think that's a really big question, because we're still, particularly post-COVID, the boom in working from home and flexible and remote working is not particularly good for the brain, to be honest. There was in all sorts of ways. So if you're working from home, you tend to be sat at your desk more, you tend to be doing longer hours. Weirdly enough, you have the flexibility potentially to prioritize brain fitness, to get up and move around, to exercise. If you don't have to commute, then you could potentially sleep a bit longer. But all the data shows that people are just working more and that they're not getting more physically active. So all of that is bad, and particularly bad because the employer doesn't have any visibility of that. At least if you're in an office, people can see if you're not moving around. They can see if you're maybe not looking, or you might talk to people. So you're also missing those social connections. So long story short, the way that many of us are working now is not great for brain fitness at all. And it's one of the reasons why, although we're very much focused on supporting the individual, we're not a tool for employers to monitor. It's not Big Brother. So like all of the businesses that we're working with, they see very, very little data, actually, very little data, and none of it personal. If they see anything, it's anonymized and amalgamated. And even then, you need to be at certain critical mass of users. So it's all about the individual. But from a business point of view, we do give them some level of visibility of the brain fitness trends within their organization, so they can identify hotspots, they can identify areas of risk even without having shared any particularly personal information. But really, we're positioned much more as a well-being benefit. We almost provide that support and that visibility on behalf of the employer, because I do believe that employers should pay for this type of technology to support the health and well-being of their people. But equally, we're also been asked by individuals whether they can buy it themselves all the time. So we've got that. I don't think it needs to be conflicting, but between B2B and B2C is a decision for us at the moment, a balance.
Very interesting. Thank you both. Given the time, we'll have to wrap up the questions there, but some really interesting questions and some great answers as well. So thanks, Matt and Emily, for coming on today. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. And thanks everybody for coming on and listening to what we've been discussing today. So before we close, if you aren't aware of Eagle Labs and what we do, then just visit labs.uk.barclays, which will be shared in the chat as well, to find out about all the support that's available to businesses just like your own. We've launched loads of new programs, and there's something for everybody, whatever stage of business that you're at, and definitely check us out to find out more. Like I said before, I'm around to answer any questions if anyone wants to reach out directly to myself. But other than that, we will close at 1 o'clock on the dot. Very good timekeeping from the three of us there, and a massive thank you to you guys at FC Labs. Found that really interesting, and hopefully I'll see you again.
Thanks for having us.
No problem. Thank you.